All right, so today we'll talk about something a little bit different outside of like the business, the mindset, and the finance. I want to talk about relationships and a situation that's happened quite recently. At least it's in sort of mainstream media. So everyone's talking about this catfish scandal, Sweet Bobby, which for me, like learning about the story just to kind of put together some notes for today's video, I was shocked and I cannot believe it. And the way I look at things is what happens, and there's no point talking about coulda, woulda, shoulda after the fact. It's all about what could have been done to prevent the situation. So this is my take. So if you are sensitive, then, close your ears or deal with it, because I'm not going to cut any corners here. I'm just going to say how it is. Mistake number one. So the victim, so there's a woman called Kira. So she was actually a married woman at the time. And as a married woman, like no woman I'd marry would be sitting on Facebook or Instagram or whatever you have these days, Twitter, messaging other guys, even as a friend. It's a no-go zone. And when the story started and, she was happily married, and then why is she entertaining or even trying to maintain a friendship with someone that she's never met? It doesn't make any sense. So again, this was the situation where she could have prevented this whole decade of madness by just staying true and respectful. It's not someone she physically met in real life or she knew. So it's not a work colleague. So why would you even entertain that? So, and this is the price that she paid for it. And again, maybe partly the blame has to be on the husband as well, because had he had a backbone and maybe audited or had an idea of, who she was talking to and set some expectations of what he deemed as what you can do and can't do, perhaps that could have helped that situation as well. But again, that's the first thing in terms of prevention. How did we even get to this 10-year madness of a cycle? It came down to talking to strangers that you don't know and you're entertaining your time. And it's so sad. Like, I don't understand why people live on social media. It's so sad. Like 8 times out of 10, people are checking to see that you're not doing well. So when you're posting, whether it's complaining or crying or whatever it is people do these days, like people are happy to see that, and that's what they look for. At the same time, when you're posting like wins and successes and things you want to celebrate, do you think people really genuinely are actually happy to see that? Only a very small percentage. So again, I don't know what people do sitting on social media all day, every day, when they've got no business to do so. And that's how you find yourself lost, because you almost enter like a different realm, like a digital realm, and you get absorbed into this online world, and it's not real. It's not real. And it's just so funny that people can get warped into, right, something's happening in my life, I must share it with my digital followers. And again, what's mad these days is people that might follow you, might be your friends on social media, will probably know more about you than perhaps your real life friends and your friends and family. So you got to think about it. How much time you actually invested in your phone, online and social media. And look, I am laughing, but at the end of the day, it's true. If you don't have any common sense and think, right, I exist in the real world, I need to live here and this is where I need to be, and you can see things for what they are, whereas online, it's anyone and everyone. And again, you'll have people with tens of thousands of friends and supporters and fans and followers, and these are people that you've never even met. And again, how you sort of forge a relationship with them is news to me, and I can't answer that question. So again, I think with Kira, my original point was, rather than spending hours in her evening, because obviously she's working 9 to 5, doing some sort of radio show, but again, she's probably on social media during that time, because let's be honest, if people are on social, they're on it all day, every day. She should have spent time with her husband and perhaps talked through whatever challenges or differences they were going through, rather than entertaining a picture, a JPEG of someone, and trying to build a relationship with someone you don't really know. Again, she should have focused on the marriage, and perhaps she wouldn't have been in this mess. But look, let's be real. If you're messaging someone for 10 years, that's a prison sentence, and you've not even had a phone call or met in real life, how can you call that a relationship? You know, like, if you're getting to know someone, and it's quite common that people will just exchange texts for a period of time, a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months, and then they'll move on to a phone call and inevitably meet up in the near future. But it's just wild. How can you, just from texting someone that you've never met, not hearing their voice, not seeing them in person, not having any sort of physical, real life interaction, how can you then come to a conclusion that you want to marry that person? It's delusional. And I think it comes from a place of desperation. So what's that saying? You know, what people won't do for love. And it is so true. And again, it's the lack of emotional and logical awareness as well. And that's what obviously got her caught up in this whole situation, because why are you investing so much time talking to someone who you can't even see in real life, or even can't even pick up the phone and have a conversation? It's just back and forth text messages, and there's no tonality, there's no personalization. It just is a text. And I don't know how people can get that caught up into a text message. Again, I don't know how, but it happens. And that's why catfishes exist, and people, you know, can hand over a lot of money to people who they don't even know. But again, that's going into a different area that we're not going to talk about today. But I think what's even more messed up is the fact that the actual catfish was her cousin sister. And I think that's a bit more messed up when it's a personal relationship, i.e. the woman impersonating this Bobby guy, it was her cousin, so it was close to home. So that's bad, and that's in a bad space in itself. If you don't know the person, there's no real connection, in this case, there's no blood connection or, you know, an emotional connection, and they were friends, then it kind of becomes, not necessarily, it's not acceptable, but it just becomes random people. You never knew who it was, and it wasn't someone significant in your life. But when you find out it's your cousin, then obviously that's no good at all. But again, how she had the time to make up like 60 plus Facebook accounts, make them all active and have friends and engage and liking everyone's posts, and they were like active accounts. So she put in a shift all day, every day, just to make these accounts live and real, and having a group chat where she's effectively talking to herself as well as this woman, Kira. And it's a prime example when people have too much time on their hands. This is why you should be out there focused on a real goal, a real objective, not having so much downtime that you can go through these levels of extent of deceit. And it's not this is a very complex operation. 60 profiles to keep that. I mean, keeping one profile active and live is a chore, but again, 60 is unbelievable, and effectively it's a full-time occupation. We don't know what her intentions were or what her motivations were, but she weren't getting paid for this. So again, it's just complete madness, like how some people can just get caught up in the BS and into the drama and literally live for it. And that includes both of them, because for someone to sit and keep something going for 10 years is a long time. And for the other person to sort of entertain a fantasy for that long is equally to blame as well. But again, I don't even know what to say. I think the lesson really is, like, desperation makes you blind, and you have to set standards and boundaries and have self-respect. If you're going to entertain someone, I've said it in my previous videos, you're not going to meet anyone of quality or anyone real or genuine online. It doesn't work like that. You have to go out in real life and interact with people in the spaces that's going to be, you know, tailored for the type of individuals that you're looking to meet, rather than anyone could present themselves online, especially over text, and their own presentation, their bios, and in this case, Facebook profiles, and you're not going to know that. So you need to have an expectation, a standard for yourself. Whereas like, I'm not going to entertain this online BS drama because look, all these, I know we've moved away from Facebook and you have, dating apps like Tinder and Bumble and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure there's others as well. But again, it's all about, having your own standards and just meeting people like the old school way, which is in real life, and you can get to sense someone's personality, see if there's a vibe, you can see who they are, what they are they a man, are they a woman, and you can avoid all these situations. But at the same time, with technology and how things are, busy lifestyle, if you are going to get into that online world and entertain relationships and look for love in that capacity, then look, we live in a day and age where you have FaceTime, you have audio messages. It's easy to get from A to B. You can hop in an Uber, even catching a flight. It's very easy. And I don't know why someone would want to wait 10 years to never meet someone. It's bizarre, isn't it? And you can't build a relationship solely by looking at a JPEG image of someone and just texting back. It's madness. And again, when the only way of your connection is by text, how can you make that real? You can't. And especially when you're a professional, you're in a professional line of work or semi-professional line of work, you should have your wits about you and you should have good people engagement and awareness and, basic social intelligence of how people understand and get by and communicate and how to build relationships. And building relationships online is virtually impossible. But again, through this story, I think people will learn the hard way. I can't foresee a situation like this happening again. But again, for me, it's like prevention over cure. And it's something that you don't want to put yourself in that situation. So that's what I always preach. Like, why would you put yourself in that situation? Like, again, like I said at the start, she's a married woman talking to a married man who, why would you do that to begin with? So, and this is someone you don't even know, someone you've just connected with online, someone's giving you a follow or a friend request. And this is where it's led to. So for me, like, how can you fall in love with someone? You want to marry someone and you've never had a phone call. And I don't know how it happens. I think people are a little bit delusional as well. And it comes from desperation. And let's be honest, the situation does scream desperation because no one in the right state of mind and any sort of logical capacity would be like, yeah, let's do this. And this was 10 years ago. So what we at, 2024? Technology was there. You can get from A to B. You had video calls at the time. And check this. The funniest thing is, right, she was on a Skype call with this guy who turned out to be her cousin and a woman for all-nighters, so sleeping with the phone on. And through whatever the story was, why he couldn't talk, you could squeak like once or twice a month. Literally, you couldn't talk properly. And by squeak, I mean, the story was said that he lost his voice through an accident and whatever else. And it turns out the squeaky voice sound was her. So obviously it's a woman trying to be a man. So that makes sense. But again, how can you stay on the phone, or in this case Skype, all night to someone who's not saying anything to you? They're just listening to you and sending a message back while you're talking to them, and vice versa. If you're on the other end of it, if you're playing that catfish, I don't know like what level of excitement you're getting out of it. And it's just like a major shame that it turned out to be her blood that did this to her. And to this point, there's no real explanation. And at the same time, how can you explain that? Nothing that you can say, whether you're a teenager, you're in a bad space, you can let it slide for a year or two, but this is 10 years. This is a full-time commitment. A baby would be in preschool between that time. So a lot happens in 10 years. But again, how can someone control you over just text? It's madness. How can someone be controlling? And I don't know. I'm a little bit lost for words. But look, the lessons learned is you've got to set your standards high and you've got to know your worth. And don't settle for these bizarre online situations that wouldn't hold up in real life. And it's not going to change me talking about this. It's not going to change with that documentary and podcast. And she's one of many. This is just a recent topic that's came into sort of conversation. But just use common sense. If you're a guy and you're talking to a woman and she's a 10-10 and you're like a 4 on the scale, and she won't go on a video call and she won't meet you, but she wants your companionship and perhaps a pound note, just use common sense. Would you get that same attention in real life? If the answer is no, then the probability is that it's going to be a catfish. But again, this day and age, there's no reason. Even the basic phones that you can pick up for 20, 30 pound will have a camera. But again, bottom line is prevention over cure. Get off the internet and just associate with people and communicate in real life. That will solve 90% of the world's problems. I can guarantee that. And look, lesson to be learned. And like I said, the bottom line is it's about respect, self-worth. And are you more than just someone's text buddy? Or do you want to build real relationships with a real foundation? And that can only be done in real life. On that note, stay safe and we'll see you on the next one.